The day Marcus fired me, he was smiling. Not a nervous smile. Not an awkward, I really hate to do this kind of smile. A real one. Slow. Satisfied. The kind of smile that tells you the person across the desk has been rehearsing this moment in their head for months. He slid a white envelope across the table, leaned back in his leather chair, folded his hands like he was about to deliver a verdict, and said, "And I need you to hear this exactly the way he said it. We've decided to move in a different direction, Serena. The company needs visionary leadership. Not back-end tinkering. Tinkering." That one word landed somewhere deep in my chest and just sat there. Heavy. Because what I had done, what he was now calling tinkering, was save his entire department. I had taken a process that used to swallow 12 people for 3 full days every single week and reduced it to a single automated system that ran quietly overnight while everyone slept. I had made his team faster. Cheaper. More accurate than every competitor on their radar. I had done it alone. Without a title change. Without a raise. Without so much as a nice work, Serena in a group email. And he fired me for it. I picked up the envelope. I straightened my spine. I did not say one single word. Because here's what Marcus didn't know, and what I want you to sit with before I tell you the rest of this story. He had just handed me back everything he thought he was taking away. And in 18 months, he would be the one calling me. Desperate. Let me back up. Because you need to understand who I was walking into that building, and who they decided to see instead. My name is Serena. I'm 32. I spent most of my 20s being the woman in the room that men either underestimated or quietly resented, sometimes both, sometimes in the same afternoon. I wasn't loud. I wasn't the one who dominated meetings or sent long emails copying 12 people just to make sure everyone knew I'd had an idea. I was the one in the corner with 3 monitors, cold green tea, and a brain that genuinely could not stop looking at broken systems and thinking, I can fix that. I had been teaching myself automation, scripting, building tools in my own time since I was 24. Late nights. Weekends. Tutorials at midnight after long days doing work that was technically beneath what I was capable of. I joined Callaway and Reed, a mid-sized logistics company, as a junior data analyst. Entry level. The kind of role where you're handed a laptop, a pile of spreadsheets, and a vague directive to support the team. The kind of role where you quickly realize the ceiling is low, the recognition is lower, and the people above you have been comfortable for a very long time. My direct manager was Marcus Devlin. VP of Operations. Mid-50s. Silver-haired, firm handshake, impressive LinkedIn. The kind of man who walked into rooms like he'd already won whatever meeting was about to happen. He wasn't cruel exactly. He was just the specific kind of threatened that men get when a woman in a junior role starts quietly outperforming the assumptions they've made about her. I didn't understand that yet. I was just trying to do good work. About 8 months in, I noticed a problem I couldn't unnotice. There was a weekly process, the vendor reconciliation report. 12 people. 3 days. Every single week, it consumed half the department like clockwork. People stayed late, got irritable, made mistakes. The same data got entered into 4 different spreadsheets, each one slightly off from the last, and somewhere in the middle of all that repetition, small errors quietly compounded into bigger ones. It was madness. Beautifully organized madness, but madness. I went home on a Thursday night and I started building. I didn't ask permission. I didn't write a proposal. I didn't schedule a meeting to pitch the concept. Because I already knew, from 8 months of watching, that if I asked, I would be told to wait for the right channel, the right quarter, the right moment that never quite arrived. So I built it myself. 6 weeks later, I had a working prototype. A fully automated pipeline that pulled vendor data, cross-referenced it, flagged every discrepancy, generated the complete report, and delivered it by email, overnight, while everyone was home. No errors. no overtime. No 12-person marathon. I tested it on a Friday evening using 6 months of historical data. By Saturday morning, it had processed everything perfectly. Clean, accurate, and done before I'd finished my first cup of coffee. Monday morning, I walked into Marcus's office and showed him. He stared at the screen without saying anything for a long moment. Then, "Who authorized you to work on this?" Not "This is impressive." Not "When can we implement it?" Not even a basic acknowledgement that I had just solved a problem that had been hemorrhaging time and money for years. "Who authorized you?" I said, quietly, "No one. I just saw the problem and thought I could help." He told me he'd need to review it through the proper channels before anything unofficial could be used. I smiled. I said of course. I walked back to my desk. 2 months later, at the quarterly leadership review, Marcus stood in front of a room full of executives and presented the new automated reconciliation system as a department initiative. He walked them through the efficiency gains. He accepted the congratulations. He got a bonus. My name was not said once. I sat in that room. I watched it happen. I smiled and clapped at the right moments. And then I went home and I built the next thing. Here's what I've come to understand, that I couldn't see clearly at the time. There is a particular discomfort that some people in power feel when a woman they've categorized as support staff starts producing results that exceed their own. It isn't always conscious. It doesn't always look like hostility. Sometimes it looks like being left off meeting invites. Sometimes it's being talked over in the meetings you do attend. Sometimes it's being given feedback like you need to be more of a team player when what they actually mean is you're making the rest of us look like we haven't been trying. After the reconciliation system, I built a scheduling optimizer. Then an automated client reporting dashboard. Then a real-time inventory alert system that caught a vendor error that would have cost the company nearly $40,000. Each one was absorbed quietly into operations. Each one had Marcus's name attached by the time it reached leadership. Each one made the department look sharper, faster, smarter than it had any right to be. And somewhere in that pattern, I stopped being an asset and started being a threat. I remember the moment it shifted. The company's COO came in for a performance review. She was sharp, the kind of woman who reads the room before she sat down. She went through department metrics and paused at the efficiency numbers. "These gains are significant. Who's driving this?" Marcus said, "It's been a real team effort." She glanced around the table. Her eyes landed on me for just a moment, curious, I thought, then moved on. That night, Marcus pulled me aside. He said I needed to align more closely with department strategy. That I should run initiatives through the proper hierarchy before development. That my independent approach was creating confusion. I kept my face neutral. I said I understood completely. 3 weeks later, the white envelope appeared. The meeting lasted 11 minutes. I know because I checked my watch when I sat down, and again when I stood up. Something in me needed to mark it. Needed to know exactly how much time it took for them to undo 2 years of my work. Marcus used words like restructuring and strategic realignment and shifting organizational needs. He mentioned my valuable contributions in a tone that made clear those words were legally required, not genuinely meant. 2 HR representatives sat on either side of the table like parentheses around a sentence nobody wanted to finish. He did not look me in the eye for more than 2 seconds at a time. I had spent my whole career learning how to make myself readable to rooms like this one. How to present, how to frame things, how to be the kind of professional presence that people took seriously. I had worked twice as hard to be taken half as seriously as the men around me. And still, here I was. 11 minutes. White envelope. Thank you for your contributions. I signed what I needed to sign. I stood up. I walked out. I carried a banker's box through the lobby, laptop, charger, the little succulent I'd kept on my desk for 2 years. And I sat in my car in the parking garage and I stared at the concrete wall in front of me. I didn't fall apart. I want to be honest about that. I didn't cry, not yet, not there. What I felt in that moment was stranger and quieter than crying. I felt still. Because sitting in that parking garage, I realized something Marcus had never once considered. The systems I had built. Every line. Every connection. Every carefully constructed dependency underneath the surface that held the whole thing together. I knew exactly where the architecture was fragile. I knew precisely what would break first when nobody who understood it was there to maintain it. And Marcus had stood in boardrooms and accepted applause for work he couldn't have explained if someone had asked him one specific question about it. I thought about that for a long time. Then I drove home. I want to be real with you about the weeks after, because they weren't a movie montage. There were hard nights. Nights where I second-guessed everything. Where that particular voice, the one women in professional spaces learn to carry around like extra luggage, whispered things like maybe you were too much and maybe you should have stayed quieter and maybe this is just how it goes. I let myself feel that for exactly as long as it needed to be felt. And then I got up and I got to work. The first thing I did was build a portfolio. Not for job applications, for myself. I documented every single system I'd built, every problem I'd solved, every measurable outcome in precise, detailed language. I laid it all out on paper and I looked at it, and for the first time in 2 years I saw it for what it actually was. Not tinkering. Not back-end noise. A body of work. The second week, I started freelancing. Small clients first. A medical billing office that was drowning in manual entry errors. A boutique law firm with a document management system held together with habit and hope. A regional retail chain hemorrhaging money because their inventory process hadn't been updated since the year I graduated high school. I fixed them. Quickly. Cleanly. And I charged what I was actually worth, not what Marcus's department grade had decided I was allowed to earn. By month 3, I had 4 steady clients. By month 6, 11. I registered a company. Apex Workflow Solutions. I found a small office space, exposed brick, a big window, a coffee maker I picked out myself. I hired a part-time operations coordinator. I put my name on the door. Not Marcus's name. Not team effort. Mine. I didn't think about Callaway and read much after that. Until the call came. 14 months after Marcus fired me, his name showed up on my phone. I stared at it through 4 full rings. Something in me, calm, almost amused, reached over and answered. Serena. His voice was different. Careful. Like he'd rehearsed an opening line and abandoned it at the last second. I don't know if you've kept up with things here, but we've had some developments. I hadn't kept up. I told him that pleasantly. He cleared his throat. The systems, your systems, we've run into significant issues. The vendor reconciliation tool went down about 3 weeks ago. We brought in 2 separate contractors. Neither of them could trace the architecture. The scheduling system has been throwing errors no one can explain. The client dashboards are, honestly, it's been a very difficult quarter. I let him finish. I didn't rush him. I'm reaching out, he said finally, to see if you'd be open to a consulting engagement. We'd compensate you fairly. Compensate you fairly. After 2 years of taking credit for everything I'd built. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead I said, calmly, Marcus, I appreciate you thinking of me. I'm happy to discuss it. I should let you know up front, my consulting rate has changed significantly since I was on staff. My standard hourly is $350, and I require a monthly retainer for any ongoing system maintenance. The silence that followed was exquisite. Not a brief pause. A full, sustained, uncomfortable silence where I could almost hear him calculating. What this would cost, what it would look like to approve it, what the alternative was. That's considerably above what we'd budgeted, he said. I understand, I said. I can send a full proposal this week so you have something to review with your team. Another pause. Yes, he said. Please do that. I set my phone down on my desk and looked out the big window in my office, the one I had picked, in the building I had chosen, for the company that had my name on it. And I smiled. I will never forget the morning I walked back into that building. Same lobby. Same gray carpet. Same faint smell of coffee and recycled air. But the feeling was completely different. Because last time I had walked out of this place carrying a box and a check and a chest full of questions I didn't have answers to yet. This time I walked in with a visitor badge that read, Consultant, Apex Workflow Solutions. Marcus met me at the elevator bank. He looked smaller, somehow. Not physically. But the specific largeness he'd always carried in that building, the authority, the ease, it had thinned. He looked like a man who had spent the last 3 weeks being asked questions he couldn't answer. He extended his hand. Serena. Good to see you. I shook it. Firm. Direct. Good to be here. And I meant that in every possible layer of meaning it held. I spent 2 days going through the systems. Finding every breakage point, every place where someone who didn't understand the architecture had pulled the wrong thread and unraveled something delicate. I fixed it all. Methodically. Completely. Not because I owed them anything, but because that's the quality of work I put my name on. By the end of day 3, everything was running again. Cleaner than it had been in months. The COO came through the operations floor on the afternoon of day 3. She stopped when she saw me. Something clicked behind her eyes, recognition, and something else. Serena? She tilted her head slightly. Didn't you work here a while back? I did, I said. She looked at Marcus. Then back at me. Then at the screens behind me showing clean, live, running data. Well, she said carefully. It's clear we have the right person in the room. She kept walking. Marcus stood very still for a moment. Then he said, let me know if you need anything. I will, I said. I turned back to my screen. Callaway and Reed signed an 18-month retainer contract with Apex Workflow Solutions. Monthly. Guaranteed. System maintenance, quarterly audits, priority response on all technical issues. I won't tell you the exact figure. But I'll tell you that in the first year of that contract, I earned more from this single client than I had made in the entire 3 years I worked for them as an employee. Marcus was the designated point of contact. Which meant twice a month, we had scheduled check-in calls. Professional. Efficient. Polite. He never mentioned the firing. I never mentioned it either. But we both knew. We knew every single call, with the same fluency that people know things that never need to be said out loud. We knew who had built what. We knew who had taken the credit. We knew exactly which decisions had led us to this specific table, and who had made them. What surprised me most, and I think about this still, was how uninterested in bitterness I turned out to be. I'd expected to feel triumphant. And there were moments, sure. The first time I saw that retainer payment clear in my business account, I sat in my office chair and let myself feel every inch of it. But mostly, I just felt free. Free from waiting to be recognized by someone who was never going to recognize me. Free from making myself smaller so someone else could feel larger. Free from building extraordinary things and then watching another person's name get attached to them. I had been so afraid of that firing. In the weeks after, my brain had kept returning to it like pressing a bruise. What did I do wrong? Why wasn't I enough? Was it something about the way I showed up? Turns out, those were never the right questions. The right question was always, what am I going to build with everything I know, now that nobody can stop me? Here's what I want to leave you with. And I mean this for every woman who has ever sat in a meeting where her idea got talked over, and then repeated by the man next to her and celebrated. For every woman who has been called aggressive for the same behavior that gets a man called decisive. For every woman who has worked twice as hard, produced twice as much, and still watched the envelope slide across the table. The person who fired you, overlooked you, took credit for your work, or made you feel like a supporting character in your own story, they are not your villain. They are a mirror. They show you, very precisely, the limit of what other people's rooms can hold. And sometimes the most important thing that can happen to you is being pushed out of a room that was never big enough for what you were actually capable of. Marcus didn't end my career. He just ran out of space for it. Everything I had built while quiet, while invisible, while uncredited, I took it with me. In my head. In my hands. In the portfolio that I built in my apartment in the weeks after he told me I was done. And I rebuilt it all, bigger, better, on my terms, with my name on it. Apex Workflow Solutions now has 11 full-time team members. 26 active clients. A real office with good light and a door that has my name on it and a coffee machine that nobody else controls. And twice a month, Marcus Devlin calls me to report on how the systems are running. He says, "Everything looks good, Serena. Thank you, as always." I say, "Anytime, Marcus." And I genuinely mean it. Not because I need his gratitude. Not because I'm waiting for an apology he'll never deliver. But because I no longer need anything from him that he isn't already paying me, professionally, on a signed contract, at my rate. That's not revenge. Revenge is still about them. This is something cleaner than that. This is what it looks like when you stop shrinking yourself into spaces that were never designed for you and go build a space that fits exactly who you actually are. If you are sitting somewhere right now feeling overlooked, feeling like your value has been decided by someone who doesn't understand it, I want you to hear this clearly. The work you do in the quiet, when nobody's watching and nobody's crediting you and nobody's clapping. That work is yours. They cannot take the knowledge. They cannot take the capability. They can take the title and the desk and the access badge. But they cannot take what you know how to build. So go build it. Somewhere with your name on the door. And let them call you when it falls apart without you. Because they will. They always do.